Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Writers Podcast. And I have a special early Christmas gift for you. I have a returning guest. Hello, Emil Rem. How are you doing?
Oh, very well, and I hope you and your listeners are doing well as well at this time of the year.
Awesome. If you may not be a regular listener, Emil was on before, back in June for episode 87. And in that episode, we talked about his book, The Gardens of Cordova. But today we're going to be talking about another book that he has written, and that is The Heart of New York, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And why would we want to talk about this book at this time of year?
Because it's set in New York at Christmas time.
Ah, okay. And what's the elevator pitch for your book, the New York book?
Well, the elevator pitch is I had about 15 people that I would send each chapter to as I did it. And every time I sent a chapter, they said, it's terrible. You know, we loved your previous book, which was Chasing Aphrodite. Why are you wasting your time writing this? It's all miserable. It's about a winter in New York. You're obviously not happy where you are in the chapters that you write. And then instead of comparing it to a sunny summer travelogue like we did in the first book and my third book, you comparing it to something boring like Calgary in Canada, who knows where that is, and on top of that, you talk about winter in Canada with boring people you met as an accountant, and you talk about people in New York, that you hardly met because the weather was so bad.
Right.
So how about that for a promotion for a book? Anyway,
Well.
the important thing is, the reason why I wrote it was I love writing the first book, which is called Chasing Aphrodite. And it was set in summer. It was set on an island. I just really loved Cyprus. And so I did this. Everybody was happy with it. They thought it was wonderful. So then I said to myself, look, if you're a real writer, if you've really got something solid to say, why don't you pick a subject that you really dislike writing about? Let's see if you can write a book about it. If you can write a book about it, then you know what? You've proved to me, myself, that I'm a writer. So the worst part, every year we go to the Bahamas for Christmas and take my family there. We have no family in Canada, just my two boys and my wife.
Okay.
So my young son at that time was a rapper, and he wanted to go to New York in winter and go to Harlem and go to this. So I tried to hit him a couple of times over the head, but it didn't work. Persuaded everybody else that that's where we should go at Christmas time. So forget my wonderful holiday in sunny Bahamas. We ended up going into New York. So I started writing about it, and I don't know whether it was the weather for Christmas, or what it was, but all my stories were all really about moral issues. So I get my guys who I send these chapters to one at a time, and each of them complains that, oh, it's not sunny, it's not historical, it's not a travelogue. What are you wasting your time on doing this? And then I had a call from one of my guys. I said, Emil, that character in your latest chapter, Joe, he's terrible. I would never have done the things he's done. And he's this, he's that, he's the other. I said, Rick, you spent half an hour telling me why you don't like this particular character in this book. I mean, what am I supposed to do if you don't like the book? Why did you spend half an hour telling me how terrible he was? And then it started to dawn on them. This book was not a travelogue. It was really a matter of putting the reader into a place where there was a moral decision to make. And you put yourself into that position to ask yourself what you would have done in that situation.
Okay.
So that's what the book was about. So as we continue with these chapters, I'm lazy. I always write 12 chapters and that's the end of it. I can't seem to go on. Perhaps it's my age. But they went into this. Halfway through the book, suddenly the penny dropped, or should I say the scent dropped, but the penny dropped. And they realized that these are real questions of asking yourself what you should or you shouldn't do in life. So there wasn't any kind of moral thing that said, this is the right thing, this is the wrong. You just put yourself in a certain gray area. And then you ask yourself what was right and what was wrong.
Right. Okay. Before we get too far into the book, because in case there's listeners that haven't heard you before, I just like to get a little bit of your background as well. You mentioned that you're an accountant on your bio.
Oh,
You mentioned that
please don't say that in public.
you're eccentric accountant. So that's an interesting description. And also, you've referenced just a moment ago a couple of times that you travelogue. So why don't you talk about the types of stories that you like to write, and how do you classify your fiction under what genre?
I would call it a travelogue, or I'd call it reflections.
Okay.
When I first started out, I started at the young age of 60 to start writing. I didn't know anything about writing, mainly
Mm,
to write books, um, to explain to my two boys where I came from, where they came from.
mm-hmm.
So the stories, I wasn't sure how much I was going to write. So I did one chapter, and then it went into another chapter. Then it went into another, and each chapter was a short story. So if you don't like the first story, you can move on to the second one. It's not that you've got to read it all to understand the picture. But once you've read all 12 chapters, make sure there's not 13. It still is at 12, because you never know with my publishers. So
Mm-hmm.
once you've got your 12 chapters, you suddenly find how they link together. So I would pick. I was very lucky and blessed that I was able to take my kids away on holiday every summer and Christmas time as well.
Mm,
And I was more interested in meeting eccentrics rather than the exotic places we went to see.
okay. And where does
And
that desire come from?
pardon?
Where does that desire come from?
Oh my God, have you got 2 hours? I was a kid when my mum divorced my dad in Africa. We were Muslims. She took
Okay.
me to England to look after me at the age of 5. Couldn't look after me. I had an English working class family who took over. My
Mm,
father remained in Africa. He worked for an airlines, and he would send me a whole swash of tickets,
right.
and they're all on standby. So I get half a dozen tickets. I go to Terminal 3 Airport and wait in the little lounge there in the British Airways office there. And whichever airplane came first, there was a space in that. At that time, there's lots of spaces. I would just get on. I'd have a little hold all with stuff in it, and I'd go everywhere.
Wow.
I didn't have any money, so I'd stay at the airport. I'd walk to town. I was from the age of 12 on. I'd walk to town. I'd come back in the evenings. And what I learned, there were no guidebooks at that time. There was no computer. There was no links with anybody or anything. And I was
Right.
just let loose into the world for 2 months, and God knows where I was, according to my parents. So I'd go there. If I saw a group of people playing soccer, I'd go and play soccer with them. So because I had very little funds, I'd sleep at the airport. And I would go into these places and just look at the places anywhere, just walk around town all day and look at the place in the evening, walk back to the airport.
Mm,
And I never knew what I was going to find from one place to another.
yeah.
And a lot of times you have a whole bunch of hovels, and then right in beside it, you'd have this wonderful temple, or you'd have a mosque or something absolutely
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal, that would take your breath away.
Right.
And so this is how I learned. And my mind was, I couldn't afford a camera. So my mind acted as a video camera. And most people don't understand what a video camera is, but it takes pictures and so on. And I would go there, and I didn't realize that everything that I saw went into my head.
Mm-hmm.
50 years later, I'm sitting there writing, and I'm writing minute details about my travels and
Mm.
about a person I particularly met, and I didn't.
So you have a
And it
photographic
was
memory.
incredible, that memory,
Yeah.
uh, paint being ripped off a door or something
Mm-hmm.
to a backyard or something like that. But it was
Right.
amazing how clear it was. So the stories are one. If you want to get away from what your regular life is, and you want to have a travel book, it's a travel book. But most of
Mm,
these books are parables. So you take a particular incident of somebody that really interested me, and
mm-hmm.
then I would compare it to somebody else that was an eccentric in my past life, and
Mm-hmm.
compare the two. But most of it was also trying to break icons within that short story. So I would start off with looking at someone through very white, bigoted, ignorant, uneducated eyes, and then turn it around, because I was looking at, say, a Muslim or something, and I would turn it around, and I'd be able to look at it from their point of view.
Right.
And so so it's like an onion with many layers to it. The outside
Mm-hmm.
is a travel book. It's humorous. Would you believe it or not? Even in the New York deal, it's humorous. And going back to the New York deal,
Hmm.
it's going to you and saying, no matter how terrible your life is, there is always signs for hope, and you've just got to find that hope. And also,
Right.
you can look at life. And this is one of my personal quotes made by me, Emil Rem, the famous author, and it's about a prism. They say life is a prism. We have to be able to shift it to
Hmm.
reflect the colors we wish.
Okay.
And a lot of ways I turned my life around because I refused to believe that all I was doing was spiraling down into nothing. I had two little kids, 1 and 3. We were spiraling down into nothing. We lost our home. We had 6 businesses. They all toppled over one after the other like a domino. I refused to do that. All I did was concentrate on the little things that I could change. And believe it or not, every one of us, no matter how large the problem is around us, has always got something that we can control.
Right.
Concentrate on the things that you can control. Fix that. You get your confidence back that you can do something. And believe it or not, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You have that little piece. You find you then a second piece will come along that's
Hmm.
attached to that. You then go off and you find how you can improve that. And bit by bit by bit, it's amazing how you can turn your life around. And the New York stories were the same way. That no matter how miserable the weather was, no matter how miserable some of the stories were, but every one of them had a turnaround. Every one of them had that
Mm.
silver lining of hope
Right.
when you read that. And they're
So
funny as well. Believe it or not, I'm very serious as an accountant. You know that in the interviews we've had. But there's a lot of humor, even in some of the sad notes.
sure, sure. I probably asked you this the last time, but I'll re-ask it again.
Oh,
When you were creating these travelogues, did the morality aspect of it, was that already in the DNA of the stories, or was that something that
it's
you you
I
added?
believe that it was. I mean, it wasn't something I thought of or planned.
Okay.
All I did was I have a framework of a travel story. Oh, say we went for a trip to Cyprus, over a trip
Hmm.
to New York, and so you have the framework of what did we do on that holiday, and then I picked the 12 things that came vividly to mind
Okay.
that I could write about. But it appeared that when I was writing these stories, even with the sunny aspects of Cyprus, say, or the Spanish, it was as though my subconscious mind was always working on the morality of things, what was right, what was wrong, what was my philosophy towards something. And that seeps into every chapter that I do. Now, if you want to, as a reader, you want to ignore that and you just want a fun tale of something, go and read this stuff.
Hmm.
It's fun, and you're not going to be forced to read the whole book. You can read a chapter, you can blow through it too. Being lazy, and I'm knowing that I can only write 12 chapters. The stories came to about the book came to about 30,000 words. I said, this is not good enough. I need
Hmm.
fillers, like they do adverts in TV shows. I need fillers.
Right.
So I said, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a guy I know who doesn't have a job and he's looking for work, but I think he's absolutely brilliant in drawing or sketching. So I
Right.
decided to spend an awful lot of time on the cover, and the cover is absolutely phenomenal. And in
Hmm.
fact, I've got it here. Here's my New York book.
Right. Yeah. A
Well, you
little.
can't see anything in there, but anyway, you
Yeah.
should
To
go to my
your.
website,
Yeah.
emilrem.ca. Anyway, but the illustrations were absolutely phenomenal. And on each chapter, I decided to put an illustration for that chapter. And the person who illustrated it had to read the story and then pick a quote under that chapter. At the end of each chapter, I wrote what's known as an author's note, and I believe I got illustrator's note underneath it as to why I wrote
Hmm.
what I did, what happened to those people I was talking about, and from the illustrator's point of view, why she chose for Heart of New York, why she chose that illustration to depict the book. So, and then at the end of it, I wrote about the people I'd worked with and so on.
Right. Did
So
your sorry? Did your artist do the cover too, or?
yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
I felt like crying when I looked at it. It is
Mm.
absolutely beautiful. It just jumps out at you. And
Hmm.
then we had matching bookmarks as well. So everything,
Mm.
I said to myself, if you're going to write, you've got less than 0.5% of a chance of making it to, say, even selling 200 or 300 copies. You're lucky if you do that.
Right.
So if I'm going to do that, why do I have to follow somebody else's success rate, or whatever you want, a success track record?
Mm-hmm.
Because all I'll ever be at the best is second best. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to put my heart and soul into whatever I'm writing, and I am going to take the risk of putting the books together the way that I would have liked to have it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
books were extremely important to me.
Mm-hmm. I
I
can see
went
behind you.
well, I went from Africa to England. I was adopted by an English family, from a middle class East Indian family that had servants and had all the time in the world, had 100 relatives around me. And I was the youngest in that family, so everybody loved me to pieces. To an alien environment where I didn't know who these people were. And my mum
Mm-hmm.
just left me there and went to work. So
Right.
as I began to read and began to learn English, I didn't know hardly any English. As I began to do all of this, my refuge were books. I could go into my own world and read the books. Since I was a kid, I loved dictionaries, where words came from,
Mm.
what they meant. So the stories I write are not only parables, in my opinion. If you
Mm-hmm.
ask me what the thing is, they're also my love affair with words and the sound of them and what they mean and how they
Right.
have different deals. Um, so I use that, and one of my favorite things are titles. So most people write a story and hey, the title comes up. I work the other way. I have an idea of what I want to write about a particular incident or
Mm-hmm.
person I met, but I go for the title. Of all the stupid things, I go for the title. So when you put the title down, then the story relates to the title. The title itself has always got at least two different meanings, but you
Okay.
wouldn't understand that until you've read the book.
Sure.
Oh, read the chapter for it.
Right.
So that's how I've operated in writing my book. And I have a passion and love for whatever I'm trying to do too.
Okay. So I'm curious, then what, Heart of New York, does that have two meanings as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
So my wonderful illustrator, who was going to go for the book, said, "Heart of New York. Why don't you call it Core of New York, or the center of New York?" I
Right.
said, "Are you crazy? There are now I'm giving you the secrets. You know, this is like
Okay.
a puzzle. You're supposed to read the title, read the chapter, then figure out what the meant. But
Okay.
I'll give you the answers now, okay? As
Well,
much as
you
it
can all,
takes.
you don't have to give us both. You can just tell us what the main.
All right. So there were two parts of the Heart of New York.
Right.
The first chapter was called The Heart of New York, believe it or not.
Okay.
So the Heart of New York was, we were living in downtown New York for 2 weeks. Actually, we were in a hotel, which was a really old hotel. I think it was called the
Mm.
Essex Hotel or something, and it was facing the park, Central Park, but
Okay. Yeah.
it's in Manhattan. So one part of it was Heart of New York because we're in the heart of New York. The other one was, I had gone with no expectations. Actually, I had terrible expectations of New York in winter. I would find the people abrupt. I find this. This is from past travels to New York in summertime when I was a little kid on my own.
Okay.
What I found was tremendous heart. But before you found the heart, there was a real brusque face off with whoever it is that you were dealing with. And
Right.
then when you broke that down, there was a tremendous amount of generosity and care. So it's New York, and it's just before Christmas. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get on the underground to get to Grand Central Station.
Mm-hmm.
The machines don't work. We have no idea what to do, and so we go back up. It's absolutely blowing wind in every direction. We go there and we catch a bus. And I'm thinking, I'm in Canada. You pay the money and you get on. She says, "Where's your Metro card?" I said, "Pardon? Where's your Metro card?" This lady was about 300 pounds, black, great big bulging eyes, like, she was the master of the universe. What was I doing? And there was about 15 people behind us waiting for the bus, right in
Mm-hmm.
the middle of New York. She says, "Where's your Metro card?" I said, "I don't have Metro cards." And we don't have anything. This is what we have. Oh, she says, well, sorry, if you don't have a Metro card, you can't get it. I said, fine. So we moved back out, all of us. And then she says, why are you moving out of my bus? I said, well, you said that you needed a Metro card. We didn't have a Metro card. She said, come in here, sit beside me. Sit beside me. Then she starts talking to us. I said, well, where are you going? What are you doing? We're from Canada. We don't know this. We haven't got that. And I just said, this is what I am. I didn't try and browbeat her or argue with her. And she
Hmm.
saw that. She saw the kids freezing, my wife freezing. And she said, you know what? I'm going to take you, although we don't stop in front of it, I'll drop you right in front of Grand Central Station. In the meanwhile, here are some maps. Here are this. This is how you get around in New York if you need. And there it is. You would never have expected that from her right at the beginning.
Right.
Then I compared her to Calgary. And the first accounting job I had was with a senior partner who was absolutely grumpy and doing this and doing that. I had my office there. I was recruited from England, and I was a manager. I had an office with glass front on it, and I had to have a table and all this stuff. And I got tired, and I was really got fed up. But it was middle of winter, so I went out and bought myself a 5,000-piece red jigsaw puzzle. I concocted a little coffee table because everyone had to have standard furniture, which is a desk,
Hmm.
a table, and bookcase. So I had this coffee table. I put the puzzle all across it. And people kept knocking on my door and saying, hey, you know what? The senior partner is not going to like it. You need to have bookable hours. This is not bookable hours. I said, I don't care. It gives me time to think. If I've got a problem, I'm happy to do it. And I'm not sitting there all day doing it. So the very next day, there's a knock on my door. And everyone can see through the window what I'm doing. And it's the partner. He's 6'3", great big beefy shoulders, beefy face. Who's this? And he knocks on my door, and I come in, and here it is. He says, this puzzle is a mess. I said, oh, I'll start clearing it up. He said, no, no, no. That guy who is 6 foot suddenly goes down on his knees. The coffee table I'd made was only about a foot off the ground. He starts putting the pieces together. I said, what are you doing? He says, you're doing the puzzle all wrong. You've got to get the end pieces. Then you put the end pieces together. Then you have to put the jigsaw pieces all in a row in columns with the same size and shape. And he said, we do these jigsaw puzzles all, every Christmas with the family. You have to be organized like you're an accountant.
Right.
Now, in the meantime, people are going past my office, and they're doing a double take, and they're coming back. This was someone who walked like a penguin. He blocked the whole of the air around him. He always had this whiff of disapproval, no matter what you did. And here's
Right.
this guy sitting down with somebody. It took an hour. He came in at 11 o'clock, and he was still doing the puzzle with me at noon. And these people were wondering what the hell was going on. So he leaves that, and he says to me, he says, Emil, would you like to go for lunch? Great, I'd love to go for lunch. The guy wasn't interested in hockey. Hockey and Calgary Flames had just arrived in Calgary at that time. And we had a
Hmm.
rinky-dink stadium, but they had tickets to it. He took me to that. He took me out for supper. He showed me about his coins. You know what? It was like somebody always needed a friend, but didn't know how to get a friend or something,
Right.
right? The
Right.
father had gone and founded the company. So so that's what I was getting at when I say that we've got opposites. You have a particular view of somebody. You don't allow your prejudice to dictate to you what that person is in the
Sure.
first 30 seconds. Give him time to open up and see. And so I compared that person to the taxi driver because it's the same thing. All authoritarian, I'm in charge and here we are. But all of a sudden, you find something that
Hmm.
appeals to them, that appeals to their heart. And every one of us has that. In
Right.
addition to that, there is tremendous generosity in people. There's tremendous generosity to strangers.
Hmm.
All you've got to do is tap into it.
Right. Right. I'm curious. Your parables, like you've written a couple of books now.
Three,
Do, three
but
are
I'm
the
writing two more at the same time.
okay? Are the parables different from location to location? Like, are New York parables? Do they have a different vibe than say
Yes,
like your European ones or whatever?
absolutely.
Okay. What's the vibe with New York?
Well, the vibe of New York was all the worst that you could meet, and how
Okay.
you overcome that.
Okay.
So one of the worst things that happened to me was that when when we had the businesses, the businesses failed one after the other, but mainly because I put it all in one bank with one bank manager. As one toppled, they pulled the plug on everything, and we lost everything.
Mm.
But then we had CRA come to me and say, "Hey, you owe us $1 million." No, I don't owe you $1 million. They took me to court. Now, if they would have won that court case, I would have not only lost everything that I had, well, we lost our home in the process. I would have been able to continue as a CPA accountant,
Mm.
and we would have had no money. We would have gone bankrupt and everything else.
Right.
Now, out of nowhere, I found a lawyer who was about 5 foot. She just began lawyering, and her name was Jennifer. And this happened 20 years ago, but she sent me, can you imagine? She sent me an email today because she's on my list of blogs every week. And she
Okay.
wished me a Merry Christmas. But that's another story. So this
Right.
5 foot nothing girl, and I'm saying to myself, my God, I have no money. I have to go to her. I can't afford a decent lawyer. But the point is, if she's got no experience, she's dealing with the top people from the Canadian Revenue Agency.
Hmm.
I'm going to lose this. But we went for it. This woman turned out to be an absolute miracle, and we won our case, and we were free as
Mm.
a result of that. But
Right.
when you would have met her with the inexperience, when and she was absolutely tough. She had no time for friendship. She had no time for sympathy. I want this answer. I want that answer. I want the other answer. I said, I phoned her one day at 6. I think it was about 8 in the morning. And I said, I found a hole in what CRA are doing. They've doubled me up twice in this particular income. I can save myself $60,000 of their tax bill because everything has got 50% interest.
Hmm.
And what she said, he said, it's no good. I'm glad you found something. She said, how dare you call me at 8 in the morning on my cell phone and tell me all of this? I said, pardon? I said, my office hours are from 9 till 4, and you call me at that time. I said, what on earth? Before the court started, she said, I have to see you. I said, when do you have to see me? I said, the court starts on Monday. I need to see you over the weekend. I want to show you how to dress. I want to tell you what needs to be done. And she gave me all these lectures. I said, but I'm in a Scrabble tournament. I'm in the Western Canadian Scrabble tournament. Well, I can't just leave it like that. Well, what time does your Scrabble finish? 6 in the evening. He said, fine. Come to my office after that, and we'll go through everything there and then. And she said, be yourself, but do not wear jogging pants. Please, I know you're an eccentric. Do not wear jogging. Wear plain pants. You don't have to wear a suit and tie. Just wear, a dark blue or whatever it is, sweater, and you'll be fine that way. And always tell the truth. And if they pick on something that puts you down at all in any way, and it's true, you admit it. So the lawyer said, oh, you just built a beautiful 5,000 square foot home on a hill overlooking the city. And I said to them, you're right, I made an absolute stupid blunder. I had 6 businesses. I thought they were going to do well, and I overstretched myself. It's my stupidity.
Hmm.
And the opposition were describing how great the house was and how this. I said, yeah, it's my stupidity. Now, if she hadn't told me that, I would have tried to deny it, and it wasn't that great, and it wasn't. By doing that, we were able to get the sympathy of the judge, who didn't really trust what CRA was telling him.
Right.
And so, anyway, so it's a long-winded way, but I hope I've answered your question.
Okay. So, are there still 12 chapters in the Heart of New York?
Are you doubting my integrity? Yeah,
No.
just go on.
Okay. Okay. And which of the 12 is your favorite story?
Well, believe it or not, it's called Judgment Day, and it's of this bloody story that I was telling you about.
Okay.
I write every Thursday. I spend 8 hours writing about 3 or 4,000 words for a chapter.
Okay.
Then I give it to my editor. We meet physically. I always like to meet physically. Meet the editor on a Friday, and we go
Hmm.
through it. And she says, "Well, this needs to be changed here. You need to put that here. You need to do this. You need to do that."
Okay.
And that's what we do.
Hmm.
And that Thursday, I had my aunt come in from blooming Montreal, and I was driving her here, there, and everywhere. So all I could do was 20 minutes worth of writing, take her somewhere, come home, do another 20 or 30 minutes, and do it. By the time I finished, this was my first draft. By the time I finished that draft for that chapter, I'd written 4,600 words. Normally, the chapters, short stories, are between 2,000 and 3,000 tops. around
Mm.
2,200 if you're lucky. So I did 4,600 words on this. And I said, you know what's going to happen? I told my wife, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to take it to my editor. And the first thing she's going to say, it's rambling, it's too long, it's too this, try again. And I'm going to have to throw that in the bin and start again. I don't know what way. Now, normally it takes 7 goes at doing this.
Mm.
So you do the chapter 1 week, you do the next, you have 7 goes on average to be able to get the chapter completed to where everybody's happy with it,
Okay.
including our cat. But we
So what
don't have
happened
it.
with the 4,600 words?
She said, you know, this is great. It's
Ah.
it's perfect. It's almost perfect. You know
So
what we're
you're
going to
a
do?
sprint writer.
Huh?
You're a sprint writer.
I have no. Well, I mean, when you're 70, of course you're a sprint rider. What do you expect? Anyway, so we sit there. It took two drafts, and she took the whole 4,600 words in it, and she created this judgment. Then, of all the things, I thought, no, who's going to be interested in a case, describing the court and describing the judge and describing CRA and what my accounting problems were and how I solved them? Who'd be interested in that kind of a thing in the middle of winter? And you know what? I send these things out with a hope and a prayer to people like Kirkus, the book review,
Yep.
independent book
Yep.
review.
Yep.
Every reviewer that read that bloody book came back and said, "Oh, the best chapter, even though it was heartbreaking, was Judgment Day."
Hmm. Wow.
And there's a twist at the end, which I'm not
Okay.
going to tell you about, but I could if you gave me $10,000. I'd tell you, but no, that's fine. Well,
Sorry, I don't have that much money on me.
well, look at the books you got behind you. Goodness me!
Look at you! Look at all the books you
I
got
noticed I
behind
don't
you.
see any of mine on that bookshelf of yours. You know.
Oh, sorry. They're out of the screen.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Look at all the books you've got.
those are all my reading list. Those are the books I've still got to read.
Ah, okay.
I
Wow.
took over. My mum suffers from dementia. She's 93,
Okay.
and we put in a fabulous community place to look after her.
All right.
And so I've taken her flat over as my office. So although this is a bedroom,
Mhm.
it also is all my computers are here for doing my tax returns, doing my accounting, and also doing my writing. So
Right.
that's what you see. You see part of that.
Okay. So, I think that's all the questions I have about New York. Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned yet that you would like to talk about now?
About the book or anything.
About anything else? Any other projects
No, I
or?
think that despite all the misery that's in that book,
Uh-huh.
it inspires people who are in trouble
Mhm.
and can't find peace. They are going to find answers for that too
Cool.
in there. And also, even though there's not some fancy picturesque views of anything or whatever,
Mhm.
I think that there is enough interest in the idiosyncrasies I write about in people to really move you from page to page. And no matter what the chapter is, you'll end up that chapter smiling to yourself. So
Cool.
if that's what you want, and if you want to get an insight into New York and the people, and in the end, I fell in love with the people in New York after all of that.
Wow. That's
And
a
I
pretty
dedicate the
heartwarming
book
tale.
to the
Yeah.
citizens of New York and their hospitality and their generosity.
Very cool. All right, Emil. And you said you're working on 2 other books?
Yep. A book is called Journey Cake, and it's about a Christmas in Bahamas. So what I normally
Mm.
do is I write a summer book, Christmas book, a summer book, winter
Okay.
book, summer book for all our travels. So this one's called Journey Cake, and
Mm.
it's set in the Bahamas at Christmas time on a place called Paradise Island at
Okay.
Atlantis.
All right.
And it's called Journey Cake because every Christmas Eve we would go to a local restaurant and we get something called Johnny Cake. And I couldn't
Mhm.
understand why they called it Johnny Cake. Nobody knew why it was called it. Then when I did my little research, it came up with that it was actually Journey Cake.
Mm.
When the Bahamians travel from one island to another looking for work or looking for something, um, they didn't know whether they were going to find food for a couple of days or not. And they then took up this cake that they made. It's a sponge cake,
Mm.
and it fills in with vegetables and other stuff, and it lasts without a fridge for a couple of weeks. So at least they have something to eat. So I said, okay, so I'm going to write about Bahamas. What's my contrary story going to be? Because there's always compare and contrast. So I said, you know what
Right.
I'm going to do? I'm going to write about how I got into writing at the age of 60, how I've worked at it for 7 years to try and get my work published. All the eccentrics, I met the most extraordinary people along the journey who were trying to help me in being able to write the book and how I thought about it. So those are the compare and contrast that I've got within that book. So that's one.
Okay, very cool. So your books can be found at the usual places?
You can find them in Amazon, and it's Emil, Emil, that's lime backwards, Rem, Rem, rapid eye movement, .ca.
Okay, very
With
good.
a
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you back on again, Emil. I want to wish you and your loved ones happy holidays, and I look forward to talking to you again down the road,
Oh, I
perhaps.
hope you do, and I wish all the same to all of your listeners who've taken the patience to stay with me in this interview. All right.
Okay,
Thank you
sir.
for your hospitality.
Thank you for your stories.
Okay.
Take care, Emil.
You too. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
take care now. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye bye.